smart.
On Sunday, when I had Mass in Manduria, I was telling the people about the text of Matthew chapter 16, which every Catholic should memorize, where Peter was handed the keys of the kingdom of heaven and said, whatever thing you bind on earth will be considered bound in heaven. And the second text that I would really recommend for every Catholic would be what we hear today in the first reading from St. Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians, where he says that, beloved, I just want to read it as it is. My dear beloved, stand firm then, brothers, and keep the traditions that you were taught, whether by word of mouth or by letter. Whether by word of mouth or by letter. Keep firm to the tradition that you were taught. And he says that never be deceived in any way. Do not let anyone deceive you in any way. I think this is so important because we've had for a very long time been battered about tradition. It's only about scriptures. Hold on to the scriptures. Is it in the Bible? Is it in the Bible? If it is not in the Bible, then it is not true. And this is what St. Paul is warning about, is warning against, that we have to be careful with people deceiving us. He says that in his letter to the Galatians chapter 1. He says that do not listen to any other gospel that is not of ours. He says this again in his first letter to Timothy chapter 4. He says that many in the last days are going to deviate away, they are going to go away from their faith by paying attention to deceitful instructions and demonic instructions through the hypocrisy of liars with a branded conscience. It's a real warning for us, my dear friends, because we live in an age where there is a lot about prophecies, a lot about fake prophets that we know already about. I don't want to talk about what happens at the moment in my country and what people can just easily give into, because people just come up and say something and even use scriptures to back that out. And many people have left even the Catholic Church because of these deceitful words from people that we do not even know about, people who claim to be men of God, arrange miracles in some places where people would arrange for miracles and they are done, and people begin to flock into these churches because of these external things that are not even needed for our faith. That's why St. Paul says we must pay attention, we must keep focused, we must hold on, we must stand firm on the traditions that has been handed down to us. It is true, other people say, is it in the scriptures? And we get deceived by that because it is not in the scriptures. We as Catholics, we do not only believe in the scriptures, we believe in the tradition, because even without a tradition, there is no scriptures. If things were not handed down from generation to generation, there will be no scriptures. And during our scripture class on Monday, I was telling one of the real problems about 2nd Isaiah. We know that Isaiah is divided into two sections. It's chapter 1 to 35 to 39 and chapter 40 to 66. The first section is talking about Isaiah warning the people, if they do not turn away from their ways, they will be judged. How will the judgment come? Through the Babylonians, through King Nebuchadnezzar. But then the second section is the section about hope, where the prophet is talking to the people who are somehow in exile already, telling them, God is going to redeem you. But then the question is, how did Isaiah talk about that if he had died long time ago? He had died long time ago, yet he was still talking as if he is talking in exile with the people. And the answer to that is that his scrolls, it is true that he said those things, but his scrolls were kept safe and they were handed down from generation to generation by his disciples. And even when the people were in exile, they were able to these disciples brought out these scrolls and read to the people, and it's as if Isaiah was speaking to the people at that time. Why? Because tradition kept those words. They were handed down from generation to generation. They were put down in scrolls. And even in the time of Jesus, if you read in Luke's Gospel chapter 4, when Jesus went to his native land, he entered the synagogue and he was handed one of the scrolls of the prophet Isaiah. They were still in scrolls. And how do we get them today as a Bible? Because of tradition. Because they were handed down from generation to generation. The disciples kept all these words. And what Jesus gave to his apostles, it's not a written word. Jesus did not write something and give to them. He spoke to them. He spoke to them. And they kept his words. They wrote it down and they handed it down from generation to generation. And that is why, like on Sunday, Peter being handed the keys of the kingdom of heaven and told, whatever thing you bind on earth will be considered bound in heaven, is still that succession, apostolic succession that we have today, until we have the infallibility of the Pope, and we have today who? Pope Leo, which has been that succession, apostolic succession. And St. Paul warns today, do not be deceived by any other thing that is outside of this. We have a great treasure that has been handed down from generation to generation. Do not listen to the hypocrisy of people with branded consciences, people who are aimed for money, people who are aimed to deceive people. And this is what Jesus brings out again in the gospel today, talking to the scribes and the Pharisees, and says to them, you hypocrites, don't deceive people. You are deceiving people with little things, yet you are supposed to tell them the real things that they are supposed to hold on in life: love, justice, mercy. You do not tell them about this. All they want is the external. Father Nish was preaching last time about the Pharisaic spirituality, about keeping to the external. It's about what we do outside. What is it that can make me clean and make people praise me for who I am? And Jesus warns against that. It's not just about what is outside, it's not about what we show off to people, but it's about the real assets of faith. What is that? It is faith, it is love, it is mercy. And therefore, St. Paul warns us strongly against the hypocrisies, warning us against false prophecy, warning us against keeping away from things that we are supposed to hold on to. And what is that? The tradition that has been handed down to us. It's a real treasure for us as Catholics, and we must hold on to that. The scriptures is very, very important, but also the tradition is so important, because this is what has been handed down from generation to generation. So my dear friends, let us continue to exalt and to listen and be faithful to the words of St. Paul, warning us against keeping away from things that we are supposed to hold on to. And that is the tradition. We ask through the intercession of St. Paul, who gives us this warning, that we may remain faithful to the words of Christ himself.
Kiss us, mother, kiss your children. Bring God's blessings from above. With your mantle blue enfold us in your gentle holy love. See the darkness dissipating, hear the trumpet echoing, Satan's rage